other side.
My name is Anna Claire Matthews, but for the first 18 years of my life, I was known as Emily Sanders. I grew up in a picture-perfect house in Willow Creek, Illinois, a small town where everyone knew everyone, and secrets hid behind manicured lawns and polite smiles. From the outside, my life was idyllic. A charming wooden house with a wraparound porch, a golden retriever named Max, and parents who seemed to embody the American dream, Margaret Sanders. My mother, or so I thought, was a renowned psychologist, her office a shrine of framed degrees and community awards. Robert Sanders, my father, was a lawyer, always in a crisp suit, his briefcase a symbol of his quiet authority. But beneath the surface, there was something wrong, something I couldn't name until it unraveled my entire world. I was raised in what I now call a glass cage. It wasn't a prison of bars or chains, but one of expectations, control, and unspoken rules. Margaret's love was a suffocating force, disguised as care. "Emily, darling," she'd say, her voice smooth as velvet, "this is for your own good." She chose everything for me: my clothes, my friends, my future. I was to be a doctor, like her. No discussion allowed. My hobbies were curated: piano lessons because they were refined, ballet because it was graceful. I wasn't allowed to play soccer or join the debate team, too aggressive, too unladylike. Robert was quieter, his presence a shadow to Margaret's light, but his silence was its own kind of control. He never challenged her, never questioned the way she shaped me into someone I didn't recognize. Our house was a character in this story, as much a part of my life as my parents'. It was a sprawling, two-story structure, painted white with black shutters, nestled in a cul-de-sac surrounded by oak trees. Inside, it was pristine hardwood floors polished to a shine. Fresh flowers on the dining table every week. But there was one place that didn't belong: room 6. It was the 6th bedroom, tucked at the end of the upstairs hallway. Its door always locked. As a child, I'd stand outside it, pressing my ear to the wood, hoping to hear something: a whisper, a creak, anything. But it was silent, heavy with a weight I couldn't understand. "Don't ask about room 6, Margaret would say, her smile tight. "It's from before you were born. A place for old memories." I was too young to question it then, but the door loomed in my mind, a mystery I wasn't allowed to solve. I was 16 when the first crack appeared in the facade of my life. It was a Tuesday afternoon in Mr. Thompson's history class, and I was doodling in my notebook, half listening to a lecture about the Civil War. He called on me, but instead of Emily, he said, "Anna." The word hung in the air, sharp and unfamiliar. The classroom went quiet, my classmates glancing at me with raised eyebrows. Mr. Thompson's face turned pale. "I'm so sorry," he stammered. "I meant Emily. I don't know why I said that." But the damage was done. His mistake clung to me like damp cloth. After class, as I packed my books, he pulled me aside. You look so much like a student I had years ago," he said, his voice low, almost nervous. Anna Matthews. I taught her 17 years ago. 17 years ago. I was 16. The math didn't add up, but his words burrowed into me, planting a seed of doubt. That night, I asked Margaret about it, expecting her usual deflection: a laugh, a wave of her hand. Instead, she froze, her teacup halfway to her lips. "Oh, Emily, he's getting old," she said. Her laugh too loud, too forced, "Probably mixing you up with someone else." But her hands trembled, and her eyes darted to Robert, who buried his face deeper in his newspaper. I knew she was lying. From that moment, I couldn't unsee the cracks. Margaret's smiles felt rehearsed, her words calculated. Robert's silence seemed heavier, as if he were hiding something too. I started paying attention to the details. I'd ignored the way Margaret watched me when she thought I wasn't looking, the way she changed the subject whenever I asked about my early childhood. I had no memories before the age of 5, which Margaret always said was normal. "You were a quiet baby," she'd say, patting my hand. But now, I wondered. I began digging. quietly at first. Margaret and Robert were meticulous, but they weren't perfect. One night, while they were at a charity gala, I snuck into the basement, where old boxes were stacked against the walls. Among tax forms and utility bills, I found a folder labeled Emily Documents. Inside was a copy of my birth certificate. The paper was worn, the edges frayed, and the ink was smudged in places. My name, Emily Sanders, was written in a different pen than the rest of the document, the handwriting uneven, the date of birth looked altered, the numbers slightly misaligned. There was no original, just this fragile, tampered piece of paper. My stomach churned. Who was I? I didn't confront Margaret. I wasn't ready. Instead, I went to the town library, searching public records for anything about an Anna Matthews. I found nothing, no birth records, no school files, no trace of her existence. But the librarian, Mrs. Carter, a kind woman with gray curls and glasses perched on her nose, mentioned something that stopped me cold. You know, your mother used to work at Willow Creek Psychiatric Hospital, she said, sorting through her stack of books. She was brilliant, but some said she was intense, kept to herself. Mostly, I thanked her and left, my heart pounding. The hospital, if there were answers, they'd be there. Willow Creek Psychiatric Hospital was a gray, hulking building on the edge of town, surrounded by a chain-link fence and overgrown shrubs. I went there under the guise of a school project, claiming I was researching mental health care in small towns. The receptionist was distracted, answering phone calls and shuffling papers, so I slipped into the records room when her back was turned. The air was thick with dust, the files organized in rows of metal cabinets. I didn't know what I was looking for until I saw her, a woman in her late 40s, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes wide and searching. She was a patient, her hospital gown hanging loosely on her thin frame. When she saw me, she froze, her hands trembling. Anna, she whispered, her voice breaking. My Anna, my baby girl. I backed away, my throat tight. I'm Emily, I said, but she shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, you're my Anna. She took you. Margaret took you. Before I could respond, a nurse appeared, her expression stern. Claire, you need to rest, she said, guiding the woman away. But not before Claire pressed a crumpled piece of paper into my hand. It was a child's, drawing a family of 3, with Anna written in shaky crayon letters across the top. I didn't sleep that night. Claire's words echoed in my head, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying. The next day, I went back to the house when Margaret and Robert were at work. I tore my room apart, checking every corner, every crevice, under a loose floorboard beneath my bed. I found it, a letter, yellowed and brittle, hidden like a secret, too dangerous to keep. It was addressed to Anna in a man's handwriting. If you're reading this, you're alive, it said. Don't trust Margaret. She's not your mother. I love you, Dad. My hand shook as I read it again and again. Anna, not Emily, Anna. The name felt foreign, but familiar, like a song I'd forgotten the words to. I didn't know who I was anymore, but I knew I had to get into room 6. Finding the key was a challenge. Margaret kept it in a locked drawer in her study, a room I was rarely allowed to enter. I waited until she was at a psychology conference in Chicago, and Robert was at his office. Using a paperclip and a YouTube tutorial, I picked the lock, my hands sweating as the drawer clicked open. The key was small, silver, and unremarkable, but it felt heavy in my palm. I crept upstairs, my heart pounding, and turned the key in the lock of room 6. The door creaked open, and the air inside was stale, thick with the scent of dust and time. The room was a child's bedroom, frozen in the past, pink wallpaper peeled at the edges. A small bed sat against one wall with a faded quilt, and a shelf held a row of stuffed animals, their eyes clouded with age. On the far wall, scratched into the paint in jagged red letters, was a single word, run. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just a room, it was a shrine, A memorial to someone else, someone I was starting to believe was me. Under the bed, I found a photo album, its pages brittle and yellowed. It was filled with pictures of a little girl who looked just like me, same brown curls, same green eyes. In one photo, she was laughing, holding a ragdoll with a missing button eye. In another, she was sitting on a man's shoulders, her smile wide and unguarded. On the last page was a newspaper clipping, the headline stark, local. Psychologist's daughter dies in tragic accident. The girl's name was Emily Sanders. She was 6 years old when she died in a car crash. I wasn't her. I was a replacement. A stand-in for a child who was gone. The truth hit me like a wave. Cold and unrelenting, I went back to the hospital, this time with a plan. I bribed an orderly with $50 to let me into the records room again. It took hours, but I found what I was looking for, a file on Claire Matthews, admitted 16 years ago for delusional disorder after accusing Margaret Sanders of kidnapping her daughter, Anna. The file included a photo of Claire holding a baby me. There are notes from Margaret herself, detailing Claire's instability and recommending indefinite confinement. It was a lie, meticulously crafted. Margaret had used her credentials to silence Claire, to keep her locked away, while she raised me as her own. I didn't scream when I confronted Margaret. I didn't cry. I waited until she came home from her conference. Standing in the kitchen with the letter from my father in one hand and Claire's hospital file in the other, "I'm not Emily Sanders," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Margaret's face crumpled, but only for a moment. Then she smiled. That same practice smile that had fooled me for years. "You're confused, darling," she said, stepping closer. "Let's talk about this calmly." But I was done listening. I turned and walked out, leaving her standing in the kitchen. Her mask finally slipping. I didn't look back. I took the money from my savings account, money Margaret had always said was for my future. And I changed my name to Anna Claire Matthews. I hired a lawyer, Rachel Nguyen, a fierce woman with a reputation for taking on impossible cases. She believed my story without hesitation. And together, we got Claire out of that hospital. She was frail, her mind battered by years of medication and isolation. But when she saw me, she sobbed and held me like I was her whole world. "Anna," she whispered, her voice hoarse but full of love. "My Anna." We moved to a small town near Seattle, where the air smelled of pine and the ocean was just a short drive away. Claire started therapy with a kind doctor named Dr. Ellis, who helped her piece together the fragments of her mind. I started remembering things, small, fleeting images of a life before Margaret, a lullaby Claire used to sing, soft and lilting, a ragdoll with a missing button eye tucked into my arms at night. The sound of my father's laugh, warm and deep, before he disappeared from my life. They were faint, but they were mine. I sent an anonymous tip to a local journalist, enclosing copies of the hospital records and my father's letter. The story broke a month later. The headline splashed across every newspaper in Illinois. Renowned psychologist accused of kidnapping, fraud. Margaret was suspended, her reputation in tatters. Robert was investigated for helping her cover it up, his law firm distancing itself from him overnight. I didn't follow the case closely. I didn't need to. The truth was out. And that was enough. I wrote a book about it all, called Room 6. It wasn't easy, putting those years into words, every moment of control, every lie, every discovery. But it was necessary. The book became a phenomenon, not because it was sensational, but because it was honest. People connected with the story of a girl who'd been controlled, manipulated, but who'd found her way out. I didn't sue Margaret. I didn't need to. The world knew who she was now, and that was punishment enough. Today, I work with teenagers who've been through what I have, kids whose parents or guardians use love as a weapon to control them. I listen to their stories, help them find their voices, their truths. On my desk is a small plaque, carved with the words, "I survived Room 6. It's not just a reminder of what I endured, it's a promise to keep going, to keep helping others break free from their own locked rooms. My story doesn't end here. It's open, like a door I've finally unlocked. I'm Anna Claire Matthews, and I'm writing my own life now, one day at a time, in a world where I'm finally free to be myself.